Hello there. I'm Joey Powell for the Coast to Coast podcast here on InsideCarolina.com. Got some breaking news for you. That's right, yes, you. Glad that you're here, and we shall let you know what that breaking news is. Sherrell McMillan, Sean Moran are joining me. We're brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt. And this breaking news segment, nugget, piece of information for you, Jonathan Powell. I know you hear Powell, you're like, oh man, that's amazing. This is just a big win no matter what. I happen to agree. But Jonathan Powell, a freshman from West Virginia, 6'6", 190 pounds out of Dayton, Ohio, has committed to transfer in to North Carolina. Sherrell, I'm looking at a guy right now, has pretty good length, averaged a little over 8 points and 3 rebounds a game, shot the ball fairly well, 37%, almost 38% from the field. You tell me, what's the story behind Jonathan Powell? Because it really seems like there was no story about him. Then all of a sudden, here he is.
That's the portal, right? There's not any information about somebody, and then they're committing to the school you cover, and you have to learn about them. North Carolina has been on a quest for some time to add, length. I think Hubert Davis has talked about it ad nauseum in press conferences, and he mentioned in his final radio show they want to get taller, they want to get bigger, and Powell is legit 6'6", so I think they like that about him, and then the fact that I think there was mutual interest kind of immediately. It wasn't a situation where Carolina kind of had to go get him, so to speak. Like there was a place that they were, him and his family were naturally interested in. So I think that always perks, especially for someone like Hubert Davis, that always perks their ears up. So there's that, and then the fact that he does have that shooting ability. Last year was obviously his first year at West Virginia, but that's kind of what he's known for, is his ability to shoot. He didn't do a ton else, honestly, in his freshman year, and part of that was probably because West Virginia lost its best or second best player kind of early in the season, and then they kind of limped through the finish line this past season. So all those things, his size, positional size, his ability to shoot, and then he's a like a low usage wing, kind of like an old school Roy Williams wing who was tall, he could shoot, he would cut, he could dunk if he needed to. And I think the challenge for Powell at UNC is going to be he's going to have to rebound some too. So he's going to be a little more active. But all those things, I think, kind of played a factor into the why of UNC. I think he really bought into what Hubert Davis and Jim Tanner were kind of telling him. We know that Hubert loves to say, a want and a need. And I think it's true because North Carolina on the wing and with the departures that they've had, and even at the guard spot, they need bodies, they need players, they need experienced players, and he's got that. And so you kind of slot them in, and they're going to come on campus, and all those guys will compete next year. So I think it's a solid signing for UNC. Again, a player from another power conference, not necessarily a lower level, who's still burgeoning, so to speak. Still has a lot of improvement to make on his game. He can be a better player.
Yeah, you mentioned Dean Smith, and I think about Dean's adage of player's biggest jump is freshman to sophomore. Sean, do you feel like that could be a similar trajectory for Powell? And I'll double that down with, do you see him as more of a traditional 3, or is he a 3-2?
Yeah, well, first off, I think sometimes it is nice to have the Cormac Ryans where you know exactly what you're going to get. In this situation, you are banking on that continued improvement, but I think you have to like where he was as a freshman and what he did show, especially for his ranking, 4-star ranking in the 80s or 90s. Usually you're not getting any type of production from the, I'd say, players in that group ranking as a freshman. So the fact that he did produce at West Virginia, Sherrell said, probably not the most active, a lot of three-point shooting, but you like the size, you like his stroke, you like how the ball goes up. So I think it's easier to project that continuing to increase. Probably one of the guys that usually you're looking at their catch and shoot, and it's a strong number, and then you look at the dribble jump shots, and it decreases substantially. His actually went up, where he was over 40% off the dribble. He was 9 of 17 from 3 over the final 5 games of the season, and I think you look at the body of work, started the year in double digits, had 11 points at Kansas. So brings a lot to the table, and I think put the foundation together where he can realistically make a good jump from that freshman to sophomore year. And yeah, I'd put him at the 3-3-2 position, where probably West Virginia, he did play a lot in the corner on the wing. So I think he can slot into that UNC offense. And once again, some improvement points around finishing at the rim. I think defensively he did really well for a freshman, but still a lot of things to improve on. But it gives you size, it gives you length, it gives you another player with skill to mix and match.
Sherrell, when you're thinking about a player like this that kind of has, I guess, multiple tools in a sense that he's got the athleticism, he's rangy, and he's got a shooting stroke. You also alluded to the fact that he's going to need to be a little more active on the glass. Do you feel like maybe North Carolina is looking more for these kind of Swiss Army knife type players? You know, I hate to go back to Leaky Black, but you think about the way he played. Leaky was never great at anything, but he was good at a lot of things. And when North Carolina needed a glue guy, he was a great glue guy, but he was never going to be the first option or an MVP. Jonathan Powell seems a little bit like that in the way he might be used at North Carolina. Tell me that's stupid, or tell me why that might be okay.
I think it makes some sense. When we talked to his family prior to his commitment, they mentioned on the phone with Hubert Davis that they like that Davis and Tanner like him because he's more than just a shooter, based upon what they saw. And they went back to his high school film when they were talking with him to say, look at what you were doing in high school, and some of that stuff maybe didn't happen your freshman year. We want to see you do it, was kind of the message. And again, with the way North Carolina played last year, it was a lot of switching. It was on defense, a lot of switching, and there was too often where you were getting a 6'2" guard who would switch, and he would get switched onto like a 5'11" guard, and or 6'4" wing would get switched onto a 5'11" guard. And so if you have the ability to switch maybe 1 through 3 with someone who's 6'6", that helps you tremendously on the defensive side. From an offensive standpoint, to your point, just the shooting stroke, I think, will continue to improve, and you are banking on that. And I think one of the reasons that you believe it will improve is because he's going to have someone like Caleb Wilson, presumably, kind of playing within, in the post, in that middle area, in the paint some, and teams are going to want to double him offensively. And when that happens, you want somebody who can shoot in the corner. And Powell, he played 83% of West Virginia's minutes in conference play this past year. So again, the Big 12 was a better conference than the ACC this past year. So he's playing great competition, albeit on a not great team, and still was able to contribute despite being a freshman, despite the distraction of his head coach looking at a job elsewhere, halfway through the season, despite them missing their best or second best player, from the majority of the season. So he took a bad situation and found a way to contribute. And I think when you get to UNC, it's not a bad situation, but you're going to have to find a niche to get you on the court. And for him, it seems like it'll be a bit of a utility player in that he can make shots, he can switch, and then the other stuff, the physicality part, is what's going to have to improve. And to Sean's point from earlier, like when he gets down to UNC in the summer, that's what you kind of hope develops, the weight room stuff, the willingness to crash the glass, the willingness to drive and get fouled. He only took 20 free throws this past year, so that's got to improve. But the tools are there, and I think this is kind of what UNC is betting on. To Sean's point earlier, again, like sometimes you know what you're getting, and that's what you want, but sometimes you go for the upside play. And Powell, he's at a baseline, he's already a solid player, as demonstrated by how much he played last year, but he also has that upside too.
Sean, clearly, we Powells are not all made the same. He might need to bring on some weight, like a guy such as myself, to help kind of fill out and work with that physicality a little bit. How much do you feel like that would improve his game if he's able to strengthen up, whether it's lower body or just being able to go through contact? How much do you think that changes his game, or how much do you think that takes his value up for North Carolina?
I think if you're starting off as a strong three-point shooter with some athleticism, because he did do well in transition and showcase an ability to whether it's the right way or left wing, get out and score. So I think just that added, once again, just the strength or explosiveness can only help, one from a confidence perspective, as well as just as you are making that leap and getting that maturity of being able to do things a little bit more and getting into the paint and not getting swallowed up per se. So I think that will be a focus point, and hopefully it can add a few more dimensions to his game, or just make him, if it is a off ball cut or some other type of movement, he is able to finish or play stronger than he did last year as a freshman.
Sherrell, last question before we get out of here. We're talking about Jonathan Powell, kid from Dayton, Ohio, who played his freshman season at West Virginia, 6'6", about a $190. Is going to be joining North Carolina for the coming season. Sherrell, I want to ask you if you could kind of play Jim Tanner for a second. What's your pitch to a kid like this, right? Where he's just, you mentioned they talked about his high school abilities and some things he wants to unlock. What are you pitching to a kid like this who's walking into a North Carolina roster that just has so many vacancies right now? And and he may not know who else is going to be beside him next season. What's your message with regard to personnel for a player like Jonathan Powell?
Yeah, a Game of Thrones reference, but like chaos is a ladder. So like when a roster is in flux and you don't know who's going to be back, someone who signs on early, who's ready to get in and work, has an opportunity to get as many minutes as they want, honestly. Because I think we've seen in the past that if you do what you're supposed to, if you work hard in the classroom like Hubert Davis wants you to, and you show that you have a skill that is repeatable, that won't hurt North Carolina when you come into the game, he'll give you playing time. And I think that's the good thing for Powell. That's the pitch, is that, hey, man, this is North Carolina basketball. Didn't have the best season last year. They want to get better. You're a part of that. Your shooting, your size, your ability to defend, and we want you to get better at North Carolina. I think that's the pitch, is that North Carolina is a world-class program. It's a blue blood. It's the biggest stage, all that stuff. And then you add on to it, come get better, come help us, so we together we can go to this next place. So I think that would be the pitch, along with financial considerations. Like I want to be very clear and candid that is happening. So along with that would be the pitch of if I were the GM or the head coach of how you get someone like Jonathan Powell. And I feel bad for kind of our friends over in Huntington and Parkersburg and the great municipalities of West Virginia. It's been a tough couple of months for them, considering their governor wants to sue the NCAA for UNC getting in the tournament, and the head coach leaving, and all the other things. So
sorry, not
bad
sorry.
for those folks. Yeah.
I'm just assuming there will be an injunction filed to keep Jonathan Powell from playing for North Carolina just because of butthurt Mountaineer athletic department employees and governors and politicians. But hey,
Sean wants no part of this, like no part at all. He's just like, please, guys, stop. We're done.
I'm uncomfortable. I don't like change. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Again, North Carolina is getting Jonathan Powell, freshman from West Virginia, coming in to play the 3. We'll be competing for a spot in the roster, or the starting spot on the roster next year. We'll see how that plays out with regard to who is on the roster when fall practice rolls around. But Sherrell, Sean, always appreciate it. Shout out to John Sigley for producing. I want to mention Johnny T-Shirt, as always. Reliable sponsors. They've been with us forever, thick and or thin. And what's funny, they've been with us for thick and thin, but they also have thick and thin clothing. If you need something really, really comfortable and padded because you're going to be in a cold climate, they got you. If you need something really thin because you're going to be ripping it off Hulk Hogan style at the beach this summer, they got you there too. Johnny T-Shirt, use the premium code found on the message boards to get your extra 10% off for being a premium subscriber to Inside Carolina. You'll be glad you did. We appreciate Johnny T-Shirt. We appreciate you for being a good listener and viewer of this show. Thank you so much for making us a part of your North Carolina sports news consumption habits. We hope that you'll stick around. We hope that you subscribe. And again, if there's other news coming down the pike, we'll make sure that we have it ready for you as soon as we can confirm. But for Sherrell McMillan, for Sean Moran, I'm Joey Powell. We'll be back on the next episode of the Coast to Coast podcast here on InsideCarolina.com. See ya.